Thank you all very much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Joe Mortimer, and I'm the editor-at-large of Destinations of the World News. It's my absolute pleasure to be hosting today's final session, in which we're going to turn our attention to the world of luxury travel and take a look at whether sustainability means some sort of compromise for luxury travelers, or, as people's understanding and perception of luxury changes, is a strong, sustainable stance actually a unique selling point that makes brands stand out against the competition? Before we dive in, I'd like you to meet our panel of speakers, who I'm going to ask to briefly introduce themselves now, starting with Nadia at the end.
Good afternoon. Great to see you all. Myself, Nadia. I'm the Director for Sustainability for Farnack Services, as well as I'm a Green Globe auditor. Green Globe is a global certification for sustainability in tourism, and for the past 6 years, I've been working with leading travel and tourism and sustainability brands for sustainable certification. Very excited to be in this panel with high expertise hoteliers and as well as the audience. Hope we are going to make this panel very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amir Goldbach. I'm the Senior Vice President of Minor Hotels for Middle East and Africa. We represent 8 different brands in the region. I think most notably, especially in the sustainable place, is our Anantara brand, which is, I would say, sustainability is at the core of our DNA and existence, and it's been at the forefront of everything we do for the longest time since inception of our brands. And I'm very excited to be here amongst our peers to discuss how, in particular, luxury travel and sustainability go hand in hand.
Thank you, Amir. Candice?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Candice de Cruz. I look after luxury brands at Marriott International. I head up the 8-brand portfolio, and my job is really around the strength of brand and the perception of brand, right from where we take it to development point of view, design point of view, the culture and property of how our brands are brought to life, and end of the day, the storytelling. And today, sustainability is very much at the center of it all.
Thank you. And William?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is William Harley Fleming. I'm the Vice President of Operations at JA Resorts and Hotels, looking after all of our properties. We've got 9 properties, 6 in the UAE, we've got Maldives and 2 in the Seychelles. Obviously oversee all of the operations, including our sustainability initiatives and everything that we do as a company. We are very much a homegrown company, originally from the UAE, started in 1981 and has continued to expand. And obviously, as sustainability and the environmental side of things has grown more and more important, it's something that we have led along with the Dubai Tourism government being the greenest 5-star resort in the UAE.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So, sustainable luxury at what cost? It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because the implication there is that sustainability means some sort of compromise for guests. Before we address that, I wonder if we should actually be coming at this from a different angle and asking luxury travel at what cost? Nadia, perhaps you could start us off by addressing that and explaining why the luxury travel industry has such a large footprint.
Usually, luxury and sustainability is not something that comes with a good equation. If you are sustainable, you might be cheap, or if you are luxurious, you are unsustainable. But the whole perspective started changing when 2 years everyone was bound inside their homes. People started missing their travels. Hotels have started feeling the crunch of a burden of their operational cost. And this is how the complete perception of sustainability has been changed, and it disrupted the way the travel and tourism industry have started thinking. Now, see, I have worked with multiple sectors, and I could say that this is one of the sector that has started sustainability or taking the sustainability initiatives a very long time. But the COVID has really put it in a very big tangle, because it was very clear that we are going to face a new sort of travelers, a new evolution of travelers who wants to have the high-end experience in terms of travel, but without compromising their sustainability of their destination. And this is why airlines, hotels, travel agencies, tourist destinations have started thinking how sustainability can be integrated as an offering into their existing services, and how it can be used to lure more customers and travelers. Now, there was a survey done which has predicted that within 10 years, the major share of travelers would be the millennial or we call the Z generations, who are more eco-conscious than the previous generations. Now, these are the travelers that are going to put a great demand on sustainability for the entire travel and tourism industries, because they want to balance their luxury or their travel with sustainability experience. And nevertheless, to say, sustainability has a cost, definitely. Right from the time you decide to board an airplane to the time you reach and stay in a hotel, definitely it comes with a cost. It comes with a series of environmental impact, including carbon emissions. But now you cannot put away sustainability saying that it is a cost factor. Why? Because every individual, every business, every organization is responsible to be sustainable or to have their impact on the global climate change. And I think that there should not be even a discussion on at a cost, because it is not a cost. It is now considered as a responsibility, where how the cost is shared between the different stakeholders is a matter of another debate. But sustainability is a need to have, and this is where the future travel and tourism industry has to orient themselves to show their commitment, as well as to gain a traction over other industries as well, because 1% of the global carbon emissions is generated only from the hotel industry, and 8% is generated from the travel and tourism industry. We have to consider that there are thousands and thousands of industries and sectors, and travel industry alone is contributing to 8%, which is a very, very big share. So now there is no, what I can say, we cannot use the term cost, but rather than that, how we are gonna integrate into the operational model of any travel and tourism project or programs.
Sure, thank you. And there is, of course, an actual cost that comes with implementing sustainable initiatives in hotels. Amir, why is it a good thing that that you guys are doing so much to address this? And who ultimately bears the cost of these initiatives? Is it the owners? Is it you guys as hoteliers? Or is it the guests?
I mean, it's an interesting question. I think in today's world, it's not really who bears the cost. I think it's more looking at the ecosystem that comes around building a hotel and looking at the entire process of developing. I think one of the key elements that really are forgotten and a lot of people don't understand in this aspect, and that's where COVID, to come to Nadia's word, was a big trigger point, was, globalization was an excellent thing. It opened the doors to the world, but I think localization is equally and more important. I think what we believe in the core of our DNA has been since inception of the Anantara brand was to go indigenous. And I think when you look at sustainability, a lot of the elements of costs of designing, constructing, building, and all the way through to operating an asset, the bigger cost that comes with sustainability is actually importation of goods, is looking at when you're operating, what are you actually benefiting for that economy that you're developing? And I think one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people do when they look at hospitality, they look at, but this is the carbon footprint in this boat. Luxury travel has a cost attached to it, and it should either be passed to the developer or the consumer. But let's bring it backwards. We put destinations on the map. We build jobs. We are creating a geosystem around the hospitality that we create. Look at Saudi Arabia. What is Saudi Arabia using hospitality for? Is to build future jobs. Is to build a future-proof economy that's going to move away from oil and hopefully reach a 10% GDP. Now, with all of that in mind, it's not the short-term cost we have to look at, it's the long-term gain that this brings. And sustainability, by definition, is, when you look at the concept of sustainability, a sustainable economy is made when you look at the entire ecosystem where you're earning your funds and spending your funds within an economy, when you have new industries developed around the ecosystem that hospitality brings, when you have new destinations coming on the world stage and the map that attracts both local jobs, international jobs, and tourists into a destination. So for me, there's a much bigger picture attached to this, that I think when you look at the cost and who bears the cost, I think ultimately, obviously, it's in a combination. In today's world, you can't afford not to be sustainable, both from a developer, both from a consumer, from an operator. If we are not sustainable in the way we think, investors won't invest in our business, because it's been mandated by most lenders that you need to have some kind of a sustainable arm. Your consumers and your your guest won't stay with you if you don't have a sustainable arm and you're not having a commitment toward net carbon zero. And your team members won't join you if you don't sense a purpose for the company they work for. And that's the new industry we're in. And we're coming back to the Gen Z that we're looking at. I think the new generation of team members or colleagues that you're employing, it's the opposite. They ask us the questions. I get asked very often, what initiatives are you taking as a company? They don't join us because they want to have a job and they want to have wealth. They join us because they want to be part of a purpose. And that greater purpose is where sustainability plays a part in that. And for us, really, at the core of our DNA, it's always been indigenous sustainable luxury. And I'm a firm believer that if you don't go indigenous in the way you run your business, you're not going to be sustainable long run to make sure that the geosystem and the economy that you're hopefully supporting and sustaining is going to have to go full circle for that as well. So that's my short answer.
Cool. Thank you. There's a couple of bits to unpack there, but first of all, Candice, as a brand, you guys do a lot of research into the mindset of the luxury consumer. And I think a lot of what Amir was talking about comes down to the perception. Tell us a little bit about how you see the luxury consumer now as it relates to sustainability.
Yeah. So Nadia spoke about how, and even Amir spoke about how the guest has changed over the last few years. We're seeing that the luxury traveler is a lot more focused on really connecting with where they travel. So what's shifted is right from sort of having bucket lists, they want to be extremely well traveled. So they want to go into destinations and spend a lot more time really connecting with the destination. What's also moved right up their list, and again, no surprise, is wellness. Wellness is linked to as much physical as it is to mental, and that's very important for a luxury consumer. But also wanting to be extremely involved in with brands. It's no longer a one-way conversation. It has to be a two-way conversation. So, and if you're having that two-way conversation, how transparent are you in your interactions? Authenticity linked to the brand DNA is extremely important to the luxury consumer. More so where they are not so, they're almost not so forgiving as a non-luxury consumer. They give you lesser chances, and to the point where they're saying the luxury audience is getting younger and younger. They absolutely want to connect with brands that connect to their own values, and sustainability is definitely part of their values.
Fantastic. And William, Amir asked the question earlier, but I'm going to put it to you now. What is the cost of not being sustainable in today's luxury travel environment?
To be honest, I think to summarize it and what our team have put, and you'll see on our ATM stand, sustainability is not a plan B, because we don't have a planet B. And I think that really has to be the underlining message, and that's what we do as a brand. And it really is saying, well, it's not a choice anymore. It's something we need to do. And I think the cost of not doing it can adversely affect your business, adversely affect your reputation. And I think at the end of the day, as Amir also alluded to, that our hospitality industry does generate jobs. So you've got to do it in the correct manner. And I think definitely looking at the touch points, looking at the pillars of your business. And I think definitely when you're looking at new builds, it is far easier than potentially a conversion or becoming more sustainable. And I think definitely looking at those ROIs you referred to earlier, they're far easier with a new build. Looking at simple things like triple glazing, making sure that the LEED standards you've got, which are fantastic standards, are being applied during the development phase of a construction of a new property really adds, and the cost of doing that actually is returned back. And there's been a lot of studies and models on that where the return on investment is there. So I think from an owner's perspective, it's to an extent no-brainer for a new build. For a conversion, it's about, okay, it's looking at that longer-term view. It's looking at your reputational side of things, and it's doing the right thing. It's having less of an impact on the environment. And for us, I mean, a few years ago, just before COVID, we removed all single-use plastic from our properties. And it was a big step. And actually to look at how much you actually have to change within your organization, within your business, to do something like that. It sounds easy. And sustainability, as you rightfully mentioned, Candice, it's not a tick box. It's actually, you've got to see it through. And I think where we've done exceptionally well is we've created a division, a department that actually monitors and audits what our properties are doing. So it's not about the necessarily the general managers or the department heads saying, yes, we're doing it right. It's about internally auditing and making sure, okay, what we're doing today is great, but how do we do it better tomorrow? And it's continuously moving that goalpost to become more and more sustainable, even with existing properties.
Sure. So we're coming at this from all sorts of angles, but Nadia, in your role as a Green Globe auditor for 6 years, I believe, What would you say are the factors that most directly impact the actual guest experience itself? And in your experience, what kind of responses has the industry seen from that? Are guests happy to deal with the initiatives that they face?
Post-COVID, all of you would be remembering that Google and Booking.com have done a survey on to measure the guest or the travelers' acceptance to sustainability. And 83% of the total respondents were very clear that they're looking for sustainability as part of the new travel requirement. And I could say that there are a lot of studies and researchers that has been done to connect the sustainability and the guest experience, and they're all pointing towards a positive impact, that how sustainability can create a positive impact, because guest feels that if I'm staying in a hotel or I'm staying in a property that takes care of the environment, definitely they would be taking care of me as well. So this is where the strong connection has been linked, and every guest is conscious of their carbon footprint, be it business guest, be it individual guest, and sustainability is all about feel good as well. So when a guest come and stay in a sustainable hotel and they are seeing the hotel taking care of the environment, in a way, they also feel good that their travel is not creating a negative carbon impact on the environment. And there are a lot of touch points where I can take for the first and foremost being sustainable certification. Yes, most of the guests which I have interacted with through my certifications, I could see that they value sustainable certifications because they feel a bit assured that the hotel is not greenwashing. So when they see that the hotel is sustainability certified, they get an assurance, yes, a third party has come and marked the sustainability. Also, the guests are very happy with all the recycling initiatives, because everyone is aware of plastics and the pollution and the ocean's impact on all of the stuff. So they are very happy to see any efforts that is going into the direction. I could say that few of the Marriott hotels which I am dealing with here have completely replaced their water bottles, and they have kept the water filtration stations, and the guests were very enthusiastically coming and filling it up. So it's not about the guests don't care, unless and until it is creating a direct impact on the payment in a big way. They are very happy with all the sustainability initiative. Greening is one other aspect. Not only the internal greening landscape, but guests are very happy to see local foods or food served from the hotel's own vegetable gardens. So these type of smaller initiatives is something which the guest usually noticed. And in-room amenities, I have seen that there is a very great change, because there are a lot of people who understand that by using a small bottle of shampoo or amenities, they are creating more waste. So they are happy to see the dispensers kept in the room. So I could say that it's all the traditional notions that being sustainable is not going to be taken by the guests. No, they are actually very happy, because when they leave the hotel, they feel that I enjoyed my stay and I enjoyed it without harming the environment. And it creates an equation where to a brand loyalty. And there were some studies by Cornell University which has clearly indicated that guests keep returning back to the same hotel who have shown more sustainability in their initiatives. So I think, and this is going to increase, so hotels should not shy away from being sustainable, and as well as communicating your sustainability initiative through the guest, because as I have mentioned again, sustainability is something or a feel good or a passion which every individual has, and it's your job to awaken it, engage with the guest so that you get a committed, loyal guest who are not only happy with staying on your property, but as well as showing their commitment to environment.
Brilliant, thank you. And Amir, Anantara in particular is a brand in which sustainability is really kind of part of the DNA. It always has been. In your experience, are there ever situations where guests find anything that you do to be a negative part of the experience? And if you have, how have you kind of mitigated those things and turned them into your advantage?
I think, I would say COVID, one of the very few positives that came out of COVID was to mitigate those few elements that may be of question, and I would go into the context of, in particular, food and beverage. Food and beverage is a major impact to the business in terms of food waste, the cost, importation of goods, etc. And I think with COVID and the borders closing up everywhere and people going a lot more into domestic travel and us opening those doors up, I think we started investing a lot more into hydroponic gardens, understanding seasonality of fruits, produce, etc. And I think historically it was always perceived as part of luxury. You need to have your beef coming in from Australia, you need to have your produce coming in from France, you need to have etc. And I think that's slowly moving away. You know, people are starting to understand that if I'm in a destination, I want to feel that destination. I want to understand, and I want to, if I'm sitting at the top of the mountain in Oman, in Jabal Akhtar, I want to experience the Omani cuisine. I want to try the pomegranates during the season from September to Jan. I want to go through that journey and experience of where I am. And I think that's become a big element. The other element which really, and coming to Nadia's point about plastic, reusable, etc., I think one of the things that we as a company, we invested very early on into this space. We invested very early on into wellness, into sustainability, and also into looking at having bottles, not going into single-use plastic, etc. But one of the things that was a bit of a resistance from a lot of people was brands. They were looking at, you know, if I want to have my amenities in the bathroom, there need to be certain brand specifics, etc., what they can associate themselves with. Now I think the consumers have gone beyond that stage. They're more curious. They're more understanding towards local culture. They understand better, you know, incorporating the local flora, fauna, and experiences into what we do. So in the spas, for instance, we've incorporated experiences indigenous to where we are. You know, to put an example, I was in India a few weeks back where we signed our first Anantara in Jaipur, and India is one of the most diverse countries I've ever seen in terms of nature, coverings. I mean, you have everything available. And I was sitting in one of the larger chain hotels, I would not mention, and I was in this lovely hotel. The bathroom, they had, obviously they've gone the next step, they had the big bottles, recyclable, etc., etc. But then you take that bottle of a soap and shampoo and conditioner, and you look at it, it's been imported all the way from US. And I'm thinking to myself, I said, this is where we like to be different. I said, you know, it may be all well and good that you're not going into single-use plastic, but you think about the journey that bottle has taken all the way from US to come here, and that's where I think going the next level makes a difference. You're sitting in Rajasthan, in the capital, one of the most beautiful locations in the world, incorporate some of that part into what you do. And I think that for me is the next level. If you look at the entire supply chain and you make an impact on importation of goods, and you actually support the local farmers and some of the local suppliers that are available and they're hungry for the business, that's where the economy will be making the difference. So for me, that's a big element of where I think sustainability has yet to go. And I think we've been at the forefront of that, and hopefully we can also use this as an opportunity for everyone to start looking at it from that perspective as well.
Sure. And you alluded a little bit there to, without perhaps directly saying so, but that it's actually easier to implement some of these initiatives in a resort setting perhaps than a city hotel. Candice, as Marriott Luxury Brands, you've got hotels all over the world. Does that resonate with you? Is it easier to get guest buy-in when it's in a resort location rather than urban?
I believe it's making sure that the guest is part of the journey, making them really part of the narrative of what you want to do, making them believe that they're actually creating an impact. And I also sort of want to dovetail on what you said a little earlier. It is not about one size fits all. We do have things that we do enterprise-wide as Marriott International. Yes, we have 32 brands. But then we also look at what is the brand DNA. Yes, you can absolutely go indigenous with some brands, like the Luxury Collection brand. It is about that being the destination authority. But the luxury consumer also wants a certain amount of consistency while traveling from one destination to the other. So how can you make sure that you're linking some of that back into the brand and the experience? So one of the elements, going back to some brands having started the journey a while ago, whether it's a resort or a city hotel, we looked at hotels and what were the top 10 most expensive elements and the impact that they had. We started this in 2018, and by 2025, we're looking at making sure that of those, 85% are sustainably sourced. So really making sure that our suppliers, and we're going to be releasing this guide to make sure that our vendors and our suppliers are part of the journey. So as we're looking at whether it is amenities, whether it's looking at bottling, whether it's looking at cleaning products, all of those elements that make the running of a hotel, the operating of the hotel, are they really making sense for the consumer? The slight difference, I would say, on a resort is that the guest tends to have a little more time. In city hotels, they're in and out. You have a few areas of where you can really connect with them as part of them, bring them on as part of that narrative. So whether it's the bath amenities in room, or whether it's at breakfast, where you're having smarter sort of displays of breakfast and local produce, and making them choose this farm to table opportunity. But in resorts, you can do a little more education. You can bring the kids in. So for example, with JW, we have JW Gardens. How can you make what we call as the young luxurian? How can you make them part of that? How can you teach them that a few things from a garden can make so much impact to a hotel in terms of the way they run? Or whether you look at community footprint, like another program that we have for Ritz-Carlton, where in a resort you can give back. So it's all about how do you make sure that the environment is as good as you first interacted with it. So whether it is beach cleanup, making them part of the beach cleanup element. So really looking at it where at a resort they are willing to give you more time, versus, and the education journey, they want to be part of the education journey, like we spoke about the water bottles. And yes, many guests are now happy to see that they can own a water bottle with their name on it and take it back with them. But how do you make sure you tell them where do you fill it and why do you fill it? So the time element, I'd say, is the difference between a city and a resort.
Okay, interesting. William, in Dubai in particular, you've kind of got the best of both worlds because you've got the resort on the edge of the city. Are you able to take some of those resort learnings into your sort of semi-urban setting?
I mean, the luxury traveler nowadays, I think just to touch upon, is that they want to be part of the whole experience, the whole journey. And I think we've learned a lot from our resorts. We're a predominantly resort-driven company. And I think things that we've done, for example, at J, the resort, simple things like the sewage treatment plant basically completely irrigates our golf course. So actually, it's a recycling of that. If you go into waste oil, which is a big one in our kitchens, and that's a problem in all hotels, is that how do you create that circular economy where you actually use the waste oil and then repurpose it again back in your properties. So we're actually driving that as we speak out across all our properties in the UAE, where at the moment our waste oil goes to a supplier in Dubai that basically takes it off us and basically repurposes it and creates a biodiesel. The biodiesel is then coming back to our properties, and then we're basically using that for the small machinery and equipment in the properties itself. So actually it's a complete circular economy where we're actually putting it back into our properties, rather than in the past where a lot of hotels have, yes, they've taken the waste oil, but it's then gone into barrels and gone into shipping containers and disappeared out of the UAE and other parts of the world. So I think definitely with the Dubai tourism and the UAE government, they are very much about driving that. We're working closely with them, and we're leading a lot of projects actually with them also to really try and push the boundaries of the envelope. I think the luxury travel wants to be part of that. Simple things like in our Maldives property, I think the ESGs and the CSR initiatives that we're doing there in relation to heart of house tours. The luxury traveler now wants to feel good, as you mentioned, feel part of it, feel they've done something positive. Whether it be go to local islands, do local island tours. Some of the local islands we've got, for example, there's one near our property in J Manafar in the Maldives, has just built their own bottling plant. So rather than, again, as a hotel, doing it ourselves, why not engage with the local community? We've got boats that go to that local island, which is a couple of minutes away, to pick up our guests, to transfer them from the airport to our island, whilst at the same time we can then pick up the water bottles, bring them to our resort and send back the empties. So really it's about engaging with the local communities, and we're doing that across all our properties, whether they be resort, whether they be semi-urban. It's about technology. It's looking at technology. Technology has improved a lot over the last couple of years, and I think definitely with as COVID, as Amir mentioned, we've looked into new technologies, new ways of doing things. And I think all these things together has definitely moved our industry forward. And again, if we're doing it as an industry, and it's great to hear that we're all doing it, we're all driving it forward, it actually then puts additional sort of pressures on our vendors, our suppliers, technology producers to actually evolve with us, because there's a demand for it. And that effectively then is passed on to the consumer, where the consumer on their luxury holiday feels that they don't feel as guilty as they would normally be, possibly, because they feel that they've done something special, they've been part of something. And I think it's definitely about where we've got to evolve.
Sure, okay. And I'm glad you brought up the subject there of how you integrate hospitality within the local communities. Nadia, in your role, is that something you can measure as well? How well hotels are integrating with the local destination?
I didn't get your question
In any of your roles with Green Globe, is there a way to measure how well hotels are integrating with the destination, interacting with local communities, giving back, giving guests the opportunities to be part in charitable initiatives, for example?
Yeah, see, increasingly when you talk about sustainability, it's not only the environment part that is pointed out. It is also into how you are taking care of the society, how you are taking care of your staff, how you're taking care of your local environment. It all encompasses sustainability. And maybe city hotels might have a bit of pullback in doing some initiatives, but we could see that increasingly destinations which are resorts or which are located in ecologically sensitive areas, they are bound to do activities or model their operations in such a way that they have to show not only the commitment to maintaining the biodiversity, but also they have to upkeep how they are supporting the local populations, the local by providing local environment. And this is something what Green Globe is very specifically looking into in the hotels that are operating in these type of destinations, on how you as a hotel brand, maybe you might be coming from another country and you're building a resort, but how you are taking care of the local environment, how you are taking care of your pollution and waste discharge, are you disrupting the local livelihood aspects, how much percentage of employment you are giving to the local people, are you protecting the local biodiversity, intellectual property rights, are you protecting the local archaeological requirements, cultural. So these are all the aspects that I could say that these type of certifications will definitely look into, because maybe traditionally in the way hotels were operating before, they have disrupted many of these environments. We know recently, right, the Thailand, one of the islands, they closed the beach because of over pollution. And what hotels need to understand that hotels are sustaining on their business is based on clean beaches, pristine environment, executes flora and fauna. And once they create an impact, in reverse, all of these aspects which they are selling to the guest gets affected. So this is where I use the term double materiality, where they need to understand what are the impacts they have on the environment and what are the impact a damaged environment will be having on their business as well. So if they can strike a balance between these two, I could say that every business, not only hotels, every business can operate in a sustainable way, and sustainability is not about shutting down the business, but rather than how you're accommodating the local customs, the culture, the environment, and integrating into your business is what makes any business sustainable and successful as well.
Sure. And I think one element of the triangle, if you like, that doesn't come up very often in these conversations is employees and colleagues. Amir, to what extent is staff training and staff buy-in important in this whole journey? In terms of the guest experience, how important is it that the staff are on board?
I mean, as I mentioned earlier, it's absolute paramount. None of this that we're discussing today is possible without that part. I think, again, going back to the entire ecosystem, and also to touch point a bit of what Nadia mentioned, when you look at, the hospitality impact, and yes, it does have a major footprint, and I think for us, the biggest component of team members is first look at how are you actually sustaining long-term with employment domestically. Domestically is very important. So when we look at, again, the Anantara brand has been always synonymous with building new destinations. When you go into a new destination, to put an example, I was in Africa a few months back in one of our properties in Zambia, the Royal Livingston, and we are basically the biggest economy there. We are the biggest employer there from all aspects. So for us, the journey that goes from developing a property, building an economy, bringing in team members in, educating the local community around hospitality, supporting the farmers to develop the produce that we require, and then going through that entire educational journey of actually making them understand the impact, something as simple as a plastic glove. One of the biggest phobias I have in a lot of the destinations I go is the usage of these plastic gloves, and then they throw them on the streets, and when you're driving up the streets, you see plastic everywhere. And making them understand the impact they make for their own nation, for that whole ecosystem that they've been helping to develop for generations is absolute paramount. And you cannot do it through sitting in a forum and explaining to them. You need to be part of that journey and make them understand the impact for the next generation to come. And I think that's absolutely paramount. I think the biggest challenge you face quite often is not the eagerness of, I would say, hoteliers or fellow peers to wanting to do that, is the legislation impact, it's the governments. And I think quite often the governments look at tourism and other elements as this is a fantastic initiative. I have an area that is underdeveloped. I can come in, throw a hotel, put a few airlines, and the economy will grow, and obviously it's going to become a bustling destination. I think if you from the beginning set the right framework for developing a sustainable tourism, like what they're doing in a number of locations in Saudi Arabia at the moment, they're looking at it ground up. They're saying we have a beautiful piece of land, we have Red Sea, we have other areas, and we're making sure that from day one, from the design development stage of its entire economy, all the way through to the hospitality schools that they're partnering up with, one of which we have now that we've opened in Thailand, they're making sure that the sustainability piece goes all the way through from today for the next 10 years until this destination goes on the map. And I think that's what we should learn from. One is the new destinations and how do we work hand in hand with governments, and that's one of our responsibilities as well. You know, sustainability can only be successful if you have the legislative following as well. You know, you cannot segregate waste in a hotel and then it goes out and it goes segregated and it pulled together into landfill. I've seen it with my own eyes. We did all the initiatives, and when we follow the trail, then you see, well, whatever you did has no purpose or good. And I think that's where we make a difference. And that's where you bring your team members and your employees on that journey for them to understand. And you don't just sit in the classroom and educate them, you bring them through the entire journey and let them be part of that impact as well. And I think that's a big part. And sorry, to add on the urban element as well, I think I would challenge a lot of our fellow hoteliers that in an urban context, in city hotels, you know, this is an area that I think we've been venturing quite significant now with the Anantara brand, is how do we make sure that the same footprint of our resorts moves into our urban cities. And I think that's also the helping front of making the governments realize and then change the legislation. Because that's what really triggered it. What triggered it is in COVID, you know, when you know, the resort and the destinations are off the beaten track. But in the city hotels, when you start showing that impact there, then you start creating the ripple effect. You'll have the governments following suit. Then you start seeing in terms of percentage of footprint into city versus off-beat. That's where the biggest footprint is made. And that's where the biggest, unfortunately, impact we have on our business as well, because of the footfall and the transitions and the turnaround. You know, when you go in a resort and you stay for 7 nights, we all understand the business. You can calculate the cost per occupied room drops over a longer period of time. But when you have guests staying for 1 or 2 nights and you have constant transition and turnover, the cost of that room goes up because you're wasting a lot more. But as you're wasting a lot more, it means you're making more impact. So people, you know, I would hope would also understand that the impact in the urban context is even more important than the resort context, because we've all been supposedly doing it there, but we haven't done enough in the urban. And that's where we believe this is our biggest step forward at the moment as a company as well.
So I just want to add one more point.
Yep.
When hotels ask me which is the biggest investment that we need to make to be sustainable, I say invest in your team, invest
Yes.
in your people.
Absolutely.
Because your people are the reflection of your brand, the people are reflection of your commitment. And I say don't invest only in the top hierarchical level, because your housekeeping cleaner, if a guest asks, why have you kept dispenser in the room? The cleaner should be able, the housekeeping staff should be able to communicate to the guest.
Correct.
This is why it is being kept. And we need creative people. Sustainability is all about innovation and creative. So we want creative chefs, we want creative housekeeping managers, we need creative engineers. All of this collective will create the momentum. Or else what will happen, whatever you invest, if it is not being executed properly, your investment is going waste. So I think this is where all the hotels have to include sustainability training as part of the mandatory on-job induction, right from the GM to the level of a stewarding staff. So,
And sorry to add to that, some of the best initiatives we have on a company level has come from the team members on the ground. It's the housekeeper cleaning the room, it's the laundry attendant, it's the steward, because they know more, they see a lot more than we do, and the impact they make on a day-to-day basis is much more significant. So it's really having that reverse cycle and letting them having an open door to
Sure.
suggest.
Candice, do you want to take that as well? I know that the training is
Sure.
important.
I mean, one of the things that we try and do is make sure that anything that's guest facing, for them to be able to talk about it in an authentic manner, is do it also in back of house, in even their staff accommodation. So for example, and yes, alongside our owners. So for example, Wasil, that owns our Mina CI properties, we looked at water dispensing machines or water dispensing within the resorts, Le Méridien, Westin and W. But we also looked at it from a staff bottling point of view. So how can we make sure that they're experiencing what a guest is experiencing, so they're talking about it a lot more authentically. Also, how can some of the magic come from operations? How can our teams come to us with ideas linked to the brand DNA? So for example, with W, we launched something called Looped In, which is really about looking at ingredients that are not used in the kitchen that can be used as part of a culinary experience. And that came out of a kitchen, came out of chefs saying, you know, we can do something different and make it creative. So how can we make it part of their culture? How can they live the culture linked to how they're talking about the brand, which makes it even easier for them to talk about it without us sort of saying, no, this is your orientation as you get in, and this is how you got to live the brand. So
Sure.
it needs to feel a little more fluid and natural.
Sure, so really kind of empowering them to come up with their own initiatives as well. William, is that something that you guys are involved with?
Definitely. I mean, from a J Resorts and Hotels perspective, before anybody sort of gets in front of our guests, they go through an induction program. And part of that obviously is about our sustainability initiatives, what we're trying to do, what the impact we're trying to do as a company to reduce our impact on the environment. That's stage one. Obviously the next stage of that is obviously empowering them. And I think definitely hotels have evolved a lot over the last 10, 15 years, where previously, if I just use food and beverage as an example again, where you would have a buffet and it'd be a set buffet on a Monday, a set buffet on a Tuesday, and somebody may not be eating those dishes, but it'll be the same buffet every single week served because that's what the menu says. However, what we've done now as a company, we empower our team members. So it's the chef special today. There's technology, again, referring back to technology before, where you can actually monitor the food waste coming back through and seeing actually the butter chicken on a Monday isn't moving actually. So why are we making it every week? And that's what the chefs are now doing. It doesn't go to a senior level. It's actually the chefs within that kitchen that actually make those decisions and change the menu. And again, it's looking at the demographics. Communication is important at hotels. There are certain times of the year where you will have more Asian guests, more Middle Eastern guests. You've got to make sure your buffets are tailored. So I think just simple things like that, where you're empowering, allowing team members to make decisions. You've got the framework, but it's not rigid where they're not able to make changes. They're not able to think on their feet and move forward and make sure they protect the business. At the same time, as I mentioned, technology, bringing it back in, giving them the tools to justify why they're making changes. Because it's always good to say, okay, you know, I've done this. And it's again, recognizing those individuals. We've got green committees in our properties where they're actually empowered to actually bring up initiatives. They're empowered to make changes. And again, monitoring those changes, coming back with tangible results. And us as a senior leadership team and as a company, recognizing great practices, recognizing new initiatives. Back to Amir saying that the team members on the ground have got the best ideas. They're the most engaged with our guests. We've got to listen to them. And if only one idea out of 100 comes to fruition, we've made a positive impact on the environment. We've actually made that change. And I think that's what makes the employees feel more engaged. It makes them feel more a part of the business. And I think it really just creates that team culture that we are doing the right thing.
Sure. I'm remembering something you told me previously, which was along the lines of sustainability used to be something that was talked about, and it's now everything. With that in mind, all of you, whoever wants to take this, what kind of gives you most hope about what's happening at the moment and where the industry is going? What are you most hopeful about? Nadia, maybe you can take that first.
See, over the past 6 years, working as a Green Globe auditor, I have seen some amazing transformations happening in the hospitality industry with my clients. And as I have mentioned before, see, comparable to other industry, this is one sector that have started talking about sustainability or thinking about sustainability maybe 20 years before. If you could see that some of the leading brands, they have already started setting their net zero target by 2030, even before governments have announced their net zero target. So sustainability is not something new to the hospitality industry, but the larger questions arise is this enough? Or should we limit sustainability only to changing maybe some plastic bottles to water filtration stations or guest room amenities? No. The biggest impact of a hotel's operation comes from two aspects. One, their energy consumption, where 60% of a building's carbon emission is coming from energy. Second is about how they are going to manage their waste, especially food waste. So what I feel that correct me if I'm wrong, that the notion of smaller, focus of sustainability, like the tree plantings or, amenities, has to change, and larger actions that actually can bring about carbon changes or decarbonization or carbon reduction has to be thought about, and there is an investment required for this. Even when I'm saying that sustainability, we should not discuss cost, but larger changes which actually will help in decarbonization of the hospitality sector need investment, and this is where I feel the biggest hurdle lies in, because hospitality is a sector that depends upon multiple stakeholder buy-in. You need to have engage your brands, you need to engage your operators, you need to engage your owners, you need to engage your guests as well as the regulators. So now, when we are very clear that the future is dependent upon how sustainable you are, hoteliers have, or the industry has to start adapting towards the concept of, finally, what I want to use the term is the net zero hotel. So it's not a very feel-good concept, but it is more about how a hotel is operating in the same way as before, but with the least reduced emissions, sustainably committed, socially committed, environmentally committed. And I feel that all these changes that is happening in the industry, the way the industry is responding to sustainability is amazing. You don't find that in a healthcare industry, or you don't find it in a manufacturing industry. So I feel that this is one of the industry that is greatly making strides toward sustainability, but it should be more focused on keeping in mind carbon reduction and decarbonization, and net zero should be the final objective or commitment. Then I can say that future is holding great. Why? Because all the hoteliers who are sitting here made it very clear that sustainability is the highest priority in their agenda. So
Sure.
it looks very promising from a sustainability auditor point of view.
Excellent. Amir, what gives you most hope?
I think to come back to her point, what the beauty of the evolution of technology for me is, you can measure. It's given us the ability to start measuring a lot of the things that you may had in place, and a lot of the talks that we had, in today, when you look at a developer and you're coming out and you're pitching for new development, in our design guidelines, sustainability is a big element. LEED certification, making sure the build is correct. But beforehand, it was considered for a developer, for an owner, for an investor, but it's a tick box, why do I need to do it? The return on investment is very long-term in sustainability. But in today's world, you can see direct, immediate impact, and that helps. Right? And then you look at the government legislation, which I came in on earlier, that's also helping us, because buildings and developments won't be sustainable for long term, because then you have to reinvest and retrofit. I think for new developments, it's absolute priority, and that's become a mandate. I think that the more complicated part is, how do you take existing and you make sure that they become more sustainable. And that you need a significant investment. But I think that's where technology for us has become a fantastic tool. In Anatar the Palm, which is a property that was run for 7 years, very successful business as a whole, so there was never really a need to invest in that space. But now, through technology, we've been able to prove to our investors, our owners and our partners, the need of doing this. We've reduced 62% of landfill. We have seen a saving of over 250,000 a month just on sustainable initiatives, just as waste management, energy reduction. Looking at the simplest measures taken in the hotels have given a huge, like the oil impact. We have over 300 ton of recyclable vegetable oil now coming into the property. Small, simple impacts with greater gain. And I think the way I would look at it is, while obviously the greater goal is to become net carbon zero, and the greater goal is to achieve all of that, I think every footprint makes a difference. How we started measuring it is by departments. In a hotel, look at each department, set a goal internally for the team, become net zero in each of the departments, and then you grow from there until you reach a property level, and then you do that across your portfolio and make it fun. Make it competitive, make it fun, reward the team members towards this goal, and advertise it. The consumers will love it, the team members will love it, and as the departments start reaching that, as a property and hopefully as a company, you'll reach that goal sooner than you'd expand it.
I like it. Sounds
Thank
good. Candice, William, very briefly, what gives you most hope?
Yes, I'd say one element around it as part of measurement is what's amazing is across the industry, specialized roles. We are looking at it from a global level, but also regionalization and localization, which is such a big part of sustainability. So how can you make sure your sustainability officer is part of that local decision making? And the measurements are also at that local level as you're looking at it. One thing for luxury guests is the quality. You don't want to compromise on quality. So alongside a sustainability officer or whatever you want to call that designation is quality managers on property. Very critical for us to make sure that we're doing it for the right reason and the guest doesn't leave feeling like jaded in any way. So making sure that works hand in hand, measuring it, pivoting from those measurements, but making sure that it remains true to the brand.
Fantastic. William, final thoughts?
I think nowadays our industry has become far more adaptable, and I think you need to be more inclusive. And I think definitely with technology, with CSR initiatives, with everything that is happening in the world, I think our industry will definitely look outside at the four walls, and you've got to make sure you are becoming inclusive. You've got to involve the vendors, the suppliers, the guests, the governments, the local communities, and take the best to say, okay, how do we continuously evolve? And I think definitely within the beauty we have within the hospitality sector, particularly in the luxury sector, is that we can adapt, we can change. And I think definitely with COVID now, as we mentioned earlier, the luxury traveler wants to see those initiatives. They want to see the change. So actually it fits exceptionally well. And it's now up to us to make that change. And I think definitely with the sustainability officers, with the team members, with the team you've got yourself, bringing those ideas into the business, making that change is not as difficult as it used to be. As I mentioned to you in one of our calls, is 10 years ago, you did the towels. If you don't want the towel, put it in the bath. If you want a new towel, hang it up if you don't. They were very small. Yes, every change has a positive impact, but it's actually the bigger changes, as referred to Nadia, that we're now seeing. So those little changes are all adding up, whilst at the same time we're tackling the bigger changes. And I think it does need investment, it does need thought, it does need stakeholder engagement. But again, because our industry is so flexible in that respect and so inclusive, we're actually moving at a lot quicker pace post-COVID than we've ever done before.
Good stuff. How are we doing for time? Can I ask the audience for a question?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Samuel. I'm from J Resorts and Hotels, and I have just two questions. One of them is in regards to transportation when it comes to, we have a lot of team members who live in different accommodations across the city of Dubai. I know this is a very contentious issue, but for the bigger brands such as Marriott or, Anantara Resorts, when you're over there at the Palm, are there any sort of discussions that go around with the local government, Dubai Tourism, in regards to how do you tackle this problem when it comes to, reducing the carbon emission that comes from the transportation, that comes from these huge buses that we see moving around the city every day? That's one question. The second question is in regards to repurposing of food waste. I know it is a very, there is an investment behind that, and a lot of companies have actually commented about the fact that, when you go back to your owners to ask for them to invest in sort of a compost solution or a solution where you can repurpose your food, it becomes a very debatable topic that can take a long period of time. Are there any discussions where you have hotels close to each other to collaborate together and sort of have a centralized, place where you can all repurpose your food waste and then at the same time achieve the same goal, especially in those properties that are close to each other, maybe located along the walk or along the palm, can have a centralized place where you can repurpose your food waste? So those questions, the only thing.
I wish I would have an immediate solution to it, but one of the things we have done, which I think does make an impact, both financially and as well on the movement, is to consolidate as much as our team members' housings in one area. Yes. One of the concerns we saw, and again, it both hits you financially, but also on the environmentally, is having, let's say in our case, having 16 properties spread across with staff housing in every corner of Dubai. The cost of moving those buses and the impact it has on the environment is very significant. So I think for us, that was probably the easiest solution, was consolidate as much as we can in one area and then use the same shuttles across multiple properties instead of just having each hotel having different contracts with different companies as well.
Thank you very much for the question, and let's continue the conversation afterwards. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you, guys. You've been a wonderful panel. Let's have a round of applause, please.